A city of splendor and strain. 17th century Paris trembled between glory and decay. Narrow streets reeked of mud, smoke, and perfume. Markets roared while church bells warned of unrest. Carriages clattered past beggars and courtiers alike. The Seine carried both commerce and corruption. Behind shuttered windows, cardinals schemed and poets whispered rebellion. Paris was brilliant, volatile, and hungry, a city poised on the edge of transformation. Welcome to Paris in the 17th century. On the Isle de la Cité, Paris felt raw and unsettled. The low, marshy island lay strewn with timber yards and warehouses, its muddy banks crowded with barges unloading grain and firewood. Life here was all labor and river grit. At the Louvre, triumph met the city's dust. The great palace rose above the churn of carts and traders, its carved victories watching over daily commotion. At the Hôtel de Ville, Paris displayed its stern civic face. The great Renaissance facade loomed above the square like a monument to order. Yet beneath its carved stone, the city's pulse beat hard and uncertain. Messengers hurried across the cobbles with sealed decrees, while disputes echoed from crowded halls where merchants, magistrates, and petitioners pressed their claims. Outside, vendors mingled with agitators, their shouts bouncing off stone walls as the Seine's cold wind swept the square. Here, power felt both ceremonial and fragile. On the Pont Neuf, Paris gathered in all its unruly glory. The wide stone bridge throbbed with vendors, jugglers, barbers, and thieves. Horses clattered past nobles in bright silks, while gossip, pamphlets, and rumors changed hands as quickly as coins. Beneath the arches, ferrymen shouted and river smells rose thick and sour. It was the city's great crossroads, loud, watchful, and alive. At the Palais Royal, Paris revealed its polished mask of power and intrigue. Behind dignified arcades, courtiers traded secrets, while the gardens offered a rare hush, gravel paths, clipped trees, and murmuring fountains. Elegance draped tightly over tension. At the Luxembourg Palace, Queen Marie de Medici's grandeur stood apart from the city's clamor. The palace rose serene above gardens of ordered paths and statues, where noble families strolled quietly, masking courtly schemes beneath calm footsteps. At the Place des Victoires, Paris displayed triumph carved in stone. Merchants, soldiers, and onlookers drifted through the circular square, centered on a statue of Louis XIV, royal authority cast into bronze and symmetry. Notre Dame towered above the Isle de la Cité, its darkened stone catching river light like a solemn beacon. Bells shuddered through the streets, and incense drifted beneath vaulted shadows where worshippers murmured hopes and fears. At the city's western edge, the Tuileries Gardens stretched in ordered rows of trees and gravel paths, offering Parisians a rare sweep of calm. Beyond them stood the Porte de la Conférence, where the city thinned into open ground and the river breeze carried dust and courtly gossip alike. At Port Saint Bernard, Paris opened to the river's rougher currents. Barges crowded the banks with grain and timber, crews shouting over the rumble of carts bound for the markets. Old gates stood weathered but watchful, marking the threshold between crowded streets and harder labor. Parisians lived densely packed. Hundreds of thousands stacked into tall houses leaning over narrow streets. Artisans, clerks, servants, and merchants moved through a daily crush of noise and toil. Privacy was rare, the city's pulse echoed in every stairwell and courtyard. The poor crowded church steps and bridge corners, wrapped in rags against the damp wind. Beggars pleaded for coins or crusts, children trailing beside them with hollow eyes, a constant reminder of hunger woven into daily life. Winters bit harder than today. The Seine often froze solid, and Parisians flooded onto the ice with skates, sleds, and makeshift stalls, turning the frozen river into a bright, fleeting winter fair. Inside warm bakeries, pâtissiers worked amid glowing ovens. The scent of sugar and butter filled the air as tarts, biscuits, and glazed fruits drew nobles and laborers alike, small luxuries in a city of noise and need. In the Galerie du Palais, booksellers offered fresh pamphlets and forbidden verses, while haberdashers displayed ribbons and fine cloth. Gossip, ambition, and bargaining filled the narrow passage, Parisian life compressed into a single corridor. In 1628, King Louis XIII ruled alongside Cardinal Richelieu in tense harmony. Richelieu's iron strategy guided France through siege and intrigue. After him, Cardinal Mazarin governed with calm intelligence, steering the kingdom through war and rebellion while shaping the young Louis XIV. Louis XIV grew up remembering unrest and fear. As king, he vowed to command Paris through grandeur as much as authority. He reshaped the city, clearing old walls, carving broad boulevards, raising triumphal arches, and filling Paris with architects, sculptors, and fountains of classical elegance. Though Versailles became his court, Paris remained his public stage, transformed, ordered, and illuminated by royal will. By the late 17th century, the Tuileries Gardens, redesigned by André Le Nôtre, stretched into sweeping geometric perfection. Broad alleys, clipped hedges, and measured symmetry reflected a new identity, disciplined, brilliant, and unmistakably shaped by the Sun King. That's all for this reconstruction of 17th century Paris. Subscribe for more journeys into the past.